It is Indiana in the Morning, presented by First Commonwealth Bank on the Voice of Indiana County, WCCS, AM 1160 and 101.1 FM. And he is Bob Pollock from the Extension Service. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
479-1160, 349-WCCS. It's 349-9227 if you have a question for Bob. I did what you said last week. I went out to the garden, took off all those yellow spotted leaves underneath the tomato plants. There's still some there, but not as many as there were, and we'll probably keep after that a little bit.
Yes.
Meanwhile, we've got a caller already. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you gentlemen doing this fine morning?
Very well.
Good,
very
and
well.
you?
Pretty good, but hey, I just went out to the garden, I looked, and my zucchini has a bottom blossom rot, and I was wondering, is it due to lack of calcium or incomplete pollination?
It could be either one.
Either one? Yeah, because for a long time, for like a month, I had small zucchini on there, and they did not grow. And then once they started growing, they started getting the rot.
Okay. Because now, the soil, we've had a lot of rain.
Right.
But in the very first blossoms that come out on those plants are male flowers. So so sometimes we can get some fruit starting to develop on those plants when they first start to flower, which are actually male flowers, so they're not going to produce a fruit, but they might start to, and then those will rot or drop off. And then after we get some male flowers going, then the female flowers will start to bloom. And once we have both at the same time, then pollination will occur, and you should start to get fruit coming on there.
Yeah, see, at the very beginning, we had a lot of bumblebees. I've only seen, on my clovers out now, I've only seen 2 or 3 honeybees. And now, all of a sudden, all the bumblebees disappeared, too. So we have no, bees to pollinate, and that's why I was wondering about incomplete pollination.
Yeah. And fruit will start to develop and can abort because of that. They might have partially gotten pollinated, but not fully, and so they don't develop properly, or they'll start and rot before they grow very far.
Okay, and I have one more question. Do we have the blight yet? Because my neighbor's garden, his leaves are turning yellow and brown spots on it, and yesterday, whenever I was out there, I had a couple leaves on mine turning.
This is what we talked about last week.
Yes, so the early blight, yes, that's around. And the septoria leaf spot, which is what Todd showed me samples of last week, that's also around. Now,
what can we do for that?
Well, again, those are both caused by funguses. Those overwinter here, so the spores are here, and then they just wait for the time when the temperature and moisture and the susceptible plants there, and then they can start and cause infections. And with all the wetting periods we've had up till now, there's been plenty of opportunity for them to get started and make new infections. So on those plants where you're starting to see a little bit of that, probably closer to the bottom of the plant, you can start and just hand pick some of those leaves off that are infected to get that out of there, and that'll help reduce the incidence or the amount of spores that are there to cause new infections. Is it mulched underneath there? Is there a barrier between the soil and the plant?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a fabric down.
Okay. Yeah,
so it's not due to splash up or anything.
And even though that's the case, we can still get stuff moving around and in the wind, and the air currents can move from one garden to the next, and in fact will move for miles. They can move from one county to another, one state to another, and that's usually how the late blight progresses, as it starts in other growing areas in other parts of the country where they're ahead of us, and then they get infections there, and then these storm fronts will move those spores around to various places. So those first two diseases are here for sure, Late blight is not here. However, it is in the state. And we talked last Friday morning, and everything was calm. And late Friday afternoon, we get an email that there had been a couple cases confirmed down in Lancaster and York County for late blight specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's, that's still a 3.5-hour drive from here, but
You got to get the spray on. You got to spray, right?
How effective is the copper sulfate?
Yeah, so the copper products will help prevent all of those diseases. Okay, and so and there's various brands and formulations of various coppers that you can buy under a bunch of different trade names because that's not a patented product. So that's why you'll see various manufacturers under various names pick that up, make their own product, and market it.
So how about just like whenever we go to our one feed supply store up there and they have the blue stuff you mix with lime, is that effective? The copper sulfate?
Right.
You know,
so the copper and the lime together, that's one combination that's been around for a long time. So you can take and mix that yourself. You can buy already formulated products with that in. You can buy just the coppers, the various formulations of copper. We still have to be a little careful. We can get some burning and things with copper, so we just have to make sure we follow the label directions and the mixing rates when we're using that and not overdo it.
I don't like to use those kind of chemicals. I mean, that's why I'd prefer copper. Is it safer to use than what these Daconil and these other ones are?
There's advantages and disadvantages to any of these things. So whether it's so with the coppers, we can get into some phytotoxicity issues. Will it equally control the disease? For the most part, yes. Copper, of course, is an element, and we can get toxicity of copper in the soil. So there is, some concern that if we overuse products on the same ground in the same area for an extended period of time, you can build up copper residues there that will take a very, very long time to go away. So that's kind of a disadvantage, even though that's a natural element that will work as a fungicide. We still need to be careful with it.
Okay, what do you use in your garden?
Always remember that the dose makes the poison. Okay.
Yes.
There are things that at certain levels that'll never cause a problem, but if you overdo it, it will. So.
Right.
Okay. All right. Time to move on.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you were going to say one more thing.
Yeah, I said, what do you use? What do you use on your own garden?
Well, I've used all those things. So the Daconils, which is chlorothalonil, okay, that's the active ingredient in that. The various formulations of copper. There's Maneb, there's Mancozeb. So there's different products that are all labeled for use on, and specifically tomatoes, that'll work on these fungal diseases.
Okay.
So those are all legit.
All righty. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
There you go. I told folks we would be getting into conversations today on tomatoes because, it's that time of year, isn't it?
It is.
It's tomato season as we think about that.
And with all the weather we've had,
it's conducive.
We have an increased chance for disease problems.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. The humidity, the dampness, dew, laying wet overnight, that just is a great recipe. We're definitely within the temperature ranges, although we're starting to, some of those 90-degree temperatures and above, that starts to get out of the zone where some of those diseases will function well. They like it a little bit cooler.
All right, I want to ask you about this. Because remember Lisa Spencer was here and she talked about the spotted lanternfly.
Oh, yes.
And so she brought me this thing that she picked up when Governor Wolf's cabinet in the community was here, all about the spotted lanternfly as an invasive pest. And yesterday we had the story about the Japanese barberry.
Yes.
And it is being considered to be banned at our area nurseries because it's a it's a tick harborer, but that wouldn't be the reason it would be banned. It would be banned because it damages crops and things of that nature. Let's talk in our remaining time here about invasive pests and invasive plants. They're everywhere, aren't they?
They are around.
Yeah.
We have numerous ones here.
So do you know about
more
Japanese barberry? Is it something that's very common?
Some are more invasive than others. In the case of Japanese barberry, it is definitely used as an ornamental plant and has been for a long time around here. There are other places where it's more invasive than it is here. So sometimes those things get characterized, okay, it's invasive, so it's terrible everywhere.
It's taking over everywhere.
Yeah, and that's not always the case.
Okay.
There are places where it does better and propagates better and becomes more invasive, and that can be said for any of the invasive insects, diseases, weeds. Those things all have general parameters of the conditions that they perform in the best. And so when you move to different areas, they're different. The climate's different, the humidity's different, the temperature, the moisture levels, the length of the season. So you get into, a lot of times you can get into a warmer climate where there's a longer growing season, and so things can be more pervasive in those areas of the country just because you have a longer growing season. So you can have more generations of an insect maybe. You might get 2 or 3 or 4 generations where you might only have 1 generation here.
So this new committee that is part of the Ag Department is going to be meeting for the very first time this month, and that's one of the things that they're talking about is invasive plants. It is called the Controlled Plant and Noxious Weeds Committee. Boy, I'd like to serve on something like that.
And I think they've had some other renditions of that.
Yeah.
That I think there's been groups or committees that have looked at these things, because they do have. If you go into Pennsylvania, you've got, there already are published lists of invasive plants.
Yeah, and it's on there. Now this committee is considering taking it one step further and actually banning the sale of this plant or that or anything that might harbor this insect or that insect. So this committee is a real thing all of a sudden with power.
And and in more managed landscapes, some of these things are much less of an issue than when you just get out into unmanaged, whether it's forests or open grasslands or things like that. So we've got things like multiflora rose, that are all over the place and cause problems, and are a challenge to keep under control. Barberry, not so much here.
Okay, we're out of time.
Already.
In fact, we went right through time. We went right through time, and
we'll have to pick this up again.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic. It is Indiana in the Morning, WCCS, AM 1160, 101.1 FM.